Essendon's time of reckoning has had to wait. The sacking of Ben Rutten at the end of a dismal week for Essendon. It was an unnecessarily tortured and cruel affair, and Rutten was right when he said that he deserved better. The football decision is totally separate to that. The football decision is justifiable, and in some ways it's sound. It's perfectly fair for a board to lose faith in its coach when Essendon have played the way that they have. And there's a bit of history that's required in all of this as well. The succession plan was proven to be a comprehensive failure. It was put in place because Essendon didn't know how to get rid of John Worsfold when they felt his time was up. They chose Rutten when nobody really thought he was the standout candidate to be the next senior coach. They marked time for a year, and in the end, Rutten only had 2 years at the helm before the board lost faith there as well. The trouble is that Essendon is clearly a house divided, and if you don't sort the politics out, then the choosing of the next coach, I'm not sure that that's the most fundamental decision to be made. Is it a good job? Is the James Hird push real? Is Essendon right to limit their search to experienced coaches? It all creates the big issue in this means test, David King, and that is Essendon.
Yeah, and last Sunday night, so 8 days ago, I felt like Essendon as a football club had lost that edge, that ruthless edge, and all the things you just pointed out highlight that. They weren't strong enough to sack Worsfold and move on. They weren't strong enough to go with it. They thought they needed Worsfold at that particular time to hold the hands of a few together. They didn't have that edge, you know. And I felt like even the handover process was flawed. We know that there wasn't a coaching process done. They never really gave themselves the opportunity to get the best available because they'd already secured Ben. Now, we all hoped Ben was going to be a great coach, but as it turned out, he wasn't a great coach. So I think the decision to move on him is their right. They're in these positions of power to make these tough calls. Now, we can disagree with them or we can agree with them. That doesn't matter. They're in these positions to take control of the football club for the best premiership intentions. The way it happened was poor. They should have terminated his contract last Monday. We all agree on that. And if they had have, I think the rest would be pretty seamless. Okay, we can disagree with it, but the thirst to get a contract in front of Alistair Clarkson to try and nab him from the clutches of the Kangaroos, I think's a viable play. Do you agree with that?
Yes.
So we all agree that that's the case. Where it leaves them now is a problem, okay? Because there's no logical next option. There isn't. If they choose James Hird, that's their right. They're not worried about what people think. They're worried about the next premiership opportunity. Now, I don't know if he's a great coach, James, or if he's a very good coach, or if he's a premiership coach. No idea. I don't think anyone has any idea on that. But if they think he is, well, all good to him. Why wouldn't they put him in the role? Do you agree with that?
I don't think it's quite as simple as that.
I know there's more to it. It's complex, but if they believe he's the man.
Yeah, so the problem in this scenario is who is they? Because there is no singular Essendon right now.
Well, the board.
It is riven at that club from coterie to board to football department. So if you can't come together with a united singular vision to find a solution, I don't know where that leaves you. Like they have to sort the politics out before they worry about hiring the next coach. But the football calendar doesn't work like that.
No.
So both are going to run
in
parallel. And if they don't sort the culture out and they don't sort the politics out, then they have had a sequence of good football people move through their club and be ruined by it.
Which happens regularly at poor clubs. We often talk about that.
And not just in the coaching job.
No, so this is Essendon's issue right now, but it's not the first time it's been an issue in the AFL. You get through it. You can come through it. But I don't know. See, Essendon track back to Essendon. They track back to Essendon people. They do. They trust their own, probably more than most clubs. And I don't see another logical option. Like Ross Lyon, I don't think wants to coach again. Nathan Buckley has said countless times he's not interested in coaching right now and not for the foreseeable future. Who else is out there with the stamps and the courage as an experienced coach to take this role right now. There's not many options. So have they, in effect, sacked a young coach to be replacing him with another young coach? I mean, that's a disaster, really. So I tend to think there's a fair bit of truth in the Herd discussion because it's what they know. And I think he'll be there in some way, shape or form. Whether that's absolutely a senior coach or not, I'm not convinced. But if he's there, he's a pseudo-senior coach.
Are they in a position to poach a coach?
Well, that's the big play, isn't it? And big plays are the only things that are going to save this current situation and save face for the board and the president, who's recently just taken over. So can they get a Damien Hardwick out of Richmond? Can they get a Ken Hinkley out of Port Adelaide? You know, they're the sorts of plays that a ruthless, strong club is able to make. Now, they're difficult to achieve. But I don't see where else they go. It's really tough. It's an awful situation on the back of maybe being overly aggressive for Clarkson.
You like the idea of Hardwick back to Essendon, but the timing's not quite going to work.
No, it's not going to work. So this is they've run a year early. I mean, they had been there for another year. I think at 2-9 they could have had the discussion with Alistair, and clearly they didn't. They waited until they absolutely knew whether they were in love or not with Ben Rutten, and I think that's their biggest error in all of this. The timings from that point forward haven't worked. They don't marry up. But Damien's got the Essendon connection. He's probably the one person in my eyes that could jump in and save the whole thing. Now, he may not want to move. Why would you? He's got a completely settled setup at Richmond. Got a similar, got a great team. He's had a fantastic tenure with the Tigers, and he's probably got a long tenure ahead of him. So he's not one that's in the Hinkley situation where if it starts poorly next year, Ken's in trouble. Damien's not in that situation, so it would have to be his call. But I mean, they're the sorts of acquisitions you're talking about. Impossible to pull off, but if you can save the whole box and dice.
Is the Essendon job a good job?
I think it is. I mean, if you can sort out all the other stuff, and you can't have success until you've got stability. We all accept that. But I think their list is a very good list. I've said this for a long time, and I think Adrian Dodoro is harshly judged. If you go through the selections they actually made, I think you'll find, and you can argue whether they paid overs for Dylan Hill or Devon Smith or those guys, but every club pays overs for the players they want and they have to trade for. And I think when you track back, the 2 years they were banned from the draft, 2013, 2014, they're the sorts of key senior experienced players right now that drive the ship. So can I just let you in on who those players would have been? So in 2013, did a bit of research yesterday. They were banned from the first two rounds of the draft in both years, and they were given a last pick in the first round in 2014 back as some sort of compensation. So they had picks 10, and they lost picks 10 and 28 in 2013. Pick 11 was Dom Sheed. Pick 13 was Paddy Cripps. Now, they've been after a big-bodied midfielder for a decade. Okay? So let's just assume they may have looked at a Paddy Cripps at that pick. At pick 28 ended up being Rory Lobb. So they're batched that year. So they traded Cramry for pick 26, and that pick becomes Zach Merritt. So that year, it could have been. Now, this is perfect world stuff, right? But their draft haul that year could have been Cripps, Merritt, Lobb, Fantasia. That's a pretty good year. The next year, they were banned from pick 12 and 30. Pick 14's Jake Lever. Pick 13's Lockie Weller. Lockie Weller, I think, at 13. Pick 30 was Braden Maynard. So they trade Ryder for effectively pick 17, which becomes Langford. Okay, so they might have had Lever, Langford, Maynard. So those 2 years have really knocked this list around because you're chasing your tail after that point. You're having to deliver players ahead of time because your list is out of whack. So I look at Michael Hurley, and these 2 years, I think the AFL are quick to dismiss clubs from drafts in terms of sanctions, but the flow-on effect is huge. These are the reasons why Michael Hurley doesn't have the tattoo. Like if you put a Paddy Cripps in that team for 8 years, you're a different profile altogether. You can take some risks with your drafting. They haven't had that luxury. So I think it's a very good list, and I think what this shows to me is that if we are ever to sanction clubs again, we saw what happened to Carlton for a decade, and I think these 2 years to Essendon are still having lingering effects.
Yes, but that's actually reassuring. So if you cheat the salary cap in such a brazen manner, and then if you conduct your club in the way that happened, this hurts you for years to come. Like, the punishment has to be so severe that it doesn't just hurt you for 1 year.
For 10.
What you've just illustrated is reassuring to me.
Really?
Draft bans are not used lightly. They are used in the most extreme circumstances, but there has to be an extreme punishment that lasts for years. That's reassuring.
So you put a line through the careers of all those players for eight to 10 years.
That club earned that penalty.
No. Yeah, okay.
And if you're not prepared to do that as a system, then where's the disincentive to
I think financial sanctions would be.
But powerful rich clubs, financial sanctions don't do the trick.
Yeah, no. We'll agree to disagree on this one. I just think to set a club back for 10 years is not really what we're all about. And these two powerful clubs have been on their knees for so long.
So the actual job, if you get the right coach, so they haven't played in the right way this year.
No.
That's a bit of a curiosity because there are well-regarded coaches within that staff, but their defensive mechanisms have been as bad as a team we've seen in a long time.
Yeah, and for a long time. Yeah, for 5, 6, 7 years. So, interestingly, so the top 4 teams going into this final series are ranked 1, 2, 3, 4 without the footy for the last 6 weeks. There's no secret to it. If you can't defend, if you're not hard to play against, if you don't deny the opposition their ball movement or their ability to score when they go inside 50 or intercept the ball in the mid-zone of the ground, if you don't do those things, you're an also-ran. And it's just a matter of what position you finish. 18th, 16th, 13th, whatever. Okay? You will never correct. You will never be competitive. And this is why Ben Rutten's not there. He's had his hands on the strategic steering wheel for 3 years and this hasn't been addressed. Or it hasn't been changed, altered. So he either couldn't do it or he wouldn't do it. Okay? War's fault. Couldn't do it, wouldn't do it. You can go as far back as you like. So the next coach that comes in, I think, starts with a pretty good list, all sorts of improvement to the system. And then from improving the system, you get better returns from your players. So the structure brings a level of consistency to those players. And you get a better spread of contributors. So I think it's a great job to get. But I just don't know who gets it. That's the hard part.
So it's got the potential upside that Carlton has had. Voss and a crew walk in and they get an immediate improvement. They end up 9th.
Yep.
But they're on the cusp of good things.
And I think they've got a better salary cap situation than what Carlton would have right now.
Okay.
Carlton have spent big on a few players to try and correct things quickly.
Yeah. So Leon Cameron was great listening on Crunch Time on Saturday. If you didn't hear that at the time, it's there on the podcast. And he spoke at length about essentially being a prospective coach, what Essendon has to do before they worry about going and talking to a coach. And he was really clear about that. So he is in that space and he could not have been clearer around what Essendon needs to do before they even think about picking up the phone and finding the next coach.
So let's have a over and unders, okay? What date do you think we'll know the Essendon coach?
Where are we? 4 or 5 weeks of the season to go. Probably it'll either be in...
Will we know by grand final day?
We'll know either side. Maybe I might go the week after the grand final for that one rather than the week of the grand final.
It's a long time away, isn't it?
But that gives them time to actually do the work. That's 6 weeks. So they can do the external review work and then start to talk to coaches. But before they get to the pointy end, go to the coaches and say, okay, this is what our clubs looks like in independent eyes so that you know this is our scenario. If it spooks you, let's not do it. I wouldn't be dallying for a single moment if I'm running the external review. I'd be starting those interviews tomorrow.
I couldn't help but think, Jared, what if Clarkson had have chose Essendon? We've had a bit of fun with Kane on the weekend. Okay, Kane's copped his clips on the weekend, and I look forward to Friday. But what if this was North Melbourne today? Where to discussions. Oh, you can't go down this path again. You can't go down. Oh, they're a basket case. Oh, they can't attract anyone. That's why I think that the Clarkson acquisition is so big.
Yep.
Because the decisions you have to make today, who knows where they take you? If they improve your football club in any meaningful way,